is it. My life is over. I have been cheated and ignored my whole life, and now I must die. I had everything, and now nothing. My life a waste. Why me, God? Why have you ignored me? Have you ever asked God that question? Why me, God? Why have you ignored me? Well, that is how Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the grandson of Saul, felt the day he was summoned to the palace of King David. You see, in those days, if you were the son of the former king, the new king always killed you and the rest of your family line. So Mephibosheth rightly reasoned that his days were finally over. After the death of his father, Mephibosheth had accidentally been dropped as a child by his caretaker and permanently crippled in both of his feet. He lived physically and psychologically broken, and because of the fear of his king, he was a man in hiding, alone, scared. But there was one thing that he did not know. His father, Jonathan, was best friends with this new king. We see in 1 Samuel 20:14 through 17, Jonathan make a covenant, which is an everlasting promise, with his best friend David. But show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord call David's enemies to account." And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. As Mephibosheth approached the throne of King David, he knew he was worthy of death. Yet he also knew the only thing he could do was bow down and acknowledge this king as Lord. But what he didn't know was in a matter of minutes, he would discover how needless his years of bitterness, poverty, fear, and hiding had been because of the covenant that Jonathan had made with David way before he was ever born to always care for his descendants. So when Mephibosheth bowed before David, David said, "Do not be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. And I will restore to you all of the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." David accepted him just as he was and showed him kindness. He did not require anything from him to sit at the table of the king and eat. Mephibosheth was qualified not because of what he had done or how he had felt, but because of the grace and mercy of a covenant-keeping king who knew his father. To me, the story of Mephibosheth is a prophetic picture of the covenant of grace. You see, we are all crippled by sin. In the beginning, when Adam sinned in the garden, the human race was dropped. The whole human race was infected by this disease of Adam's sin and rebellion. Adam had everything, and yet he still turned away from God. We are like Mephibosheth. We are crippled, and nothing we do in our own strength can change it. Without the kindness of the king, we have no hope. And although we are crippled by sin, we are qualified by the covenant. Like the covenant Mephibosheth's father made with King David, our King Jesus made a covenant with his father to redeem us from our spiritual brokenness. He made it for us with his own broken body and bloodshed on the cross. This covenant now qualifies us to sit at the table with the king and eat. Even though we've been rejected, thrown away, and scarred by this life, we are qualified by this new covenant made by our king. In Luke 22:20, Jesus says, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." Jesus is the new covenant, and he made this covenant with our Father. Now, he has summoned us to him. If we bow before him, confess him as king, and make him the Lord of our life, we are saved from death and restored. Because of his blood, we are shown favor and qualified to eat at the table with the king. And finally, we are saved by grace. If Mephibosheth had continued to live in the darkness of his brokenness, he would have never known the home that awaited him in the palace of the king. I could stand here and give you illustrations of my life and the lives of those around me, but the fact is, we are all like Mephibosheth. We've all been dropped, and we're all crippled by sin. But this covenant of grace has been given to you, to me, to everyone. So come just as you are to the throne of the king, that he may show you his kindness, and you may sit at the table with him in his presence forever.